welcome to Painter Pride Quarterly Slush Pile. The mission of this show is to show you our democratic editorial process, because we do take a while to get back to our the people who submit to us, but you'll see why in another few minutes. We care, right? And the we in question will start with me, because that's how I am. I'm Kathleen Volkmiller, and here I am in the studio in Corman, and I'm an essayist and co-editor of the Painter Pride Quarterly. And I am so excited because today is a very, very special day, because right here on my left, close enough to tickle, is BJ Ward.
Hello, it's good to be here. BJ Ward. I'm the author of, most recently, Jackleg Opera. I'm a poet who works in New Jersey and at Warren County Community College. Proud to be part of the faculty there.
Awesome. And then around the table here in Philly, we have Tim Fitz.
Hi, I'm Tim Fitz. I'm the author of 2 short story collections, and I have a couple of new flash fiction pieces in the Adirondack Review, Fugue, and another piece forthcoming in Fiction Southeast. So we'll put links up to those.
Yes, we will. And we all say will, and we will, and then we all look at Ollie. Hello, Ollie.
Hello, I am here as well. Ollie Ziabashtarari, Kathleen's co-op here at Drexel University. I am happy to be here in this lovely morning. It's actually very nice out today.
It's beautiful
compared
today.
to yesterday. It was raining so hard.
Yeah, we've been under deluge. Mm-hmm. So, Marion, you're our only remote person today.
I love that you're around the table and around the world. Hi, this is Marion. I am the co-editor of Painter Pride Quarterly with Kathleen for the last, few decades. I wish I could tell you that I've had something published recently, but I haven't, because I've been working on the draft of a novel, and I've been inventing a university out here in the desert. I work for NYU Abu Dhabi, and I've helped to build the writing program out here. So all kinds of inventions for writing and creative writers in the 21st century. So,
but that's certainly not nothing. All I've been doing is building a university out in the desert.
Doesn't it sound like bricks and mortar? I'm actually like, I've got earth movers and like a labor force. You know, that's how it goes.
In the midst of sandstorms is when I sit down and write my novel.
You do.
I'm so glad to hear you speak of your novel. That makes me really excited. Later on, if the moment arises, I might talk to you all about CBD oil and what it's doing for me and my writing. And then also,
I can't wait to hear that.
So I might speak about flea killing solution, because you will understand how they're related. But what I also want to say is I'm so glad you're talking about your novel. Right?
Thank you.
And I'm equally glad that we've only talked to BJ about being on the podcast since its inception. And so I'm so glad that he's finally here. And now I'm going to bounce it right back at him, put you on the spot for just a second. Is there any way you feel like reading a poem, BJ?
Yay! Say yes.
Yeah, sure. All right. Sure. This is why we asked him, because we knew he would just be amenable and do whatever we tell him to do. So we have for us today 2 poems by one poet whose name is James Arthur. Mm-hmm. And I think BJ is ready to start things off and read the poem study. But Tim is interrupting us. Yes.
You mentioned that we can tell him to do anything. And I was wondering if this might be the week that we could have Ali fight one of the guests.
No. Oh, yeah, we did. Do you know anything about MMA?
Sure. Because we could clear the furniture out.
Easily. There's not much.
Scoot the table back.
Are you ready?
I don't think our insurance covers this, Tim.
Okay.
Oh.
Just wanted to throw it out there.
Okay. All right. Well, so instead of that, maybe you'll read a poem.
I know.
I am so homesick. You have no idea how homesick this threat of battle is making me. Anyway, BJ, please read the poem.
Okay.
Take us all out.
So this is by James Arthur. Study. No beast of theory, nor mere poet's creature roaming the brain savannah, eating words. No, this is a real giraffe, an American giraffe, at the zoo. 2 kids stare its hoof, pecks, the ground. Like the heel of a walking stick, it slow steps around the yard, a living crane, whisking its tail. It shifts and leans, eating the leaves, hoisting its precarious head before sailing past the gate, eyeing the trucks, what is going on in its mind.
Thank you.
Beautiful reading.
How about that? No prep. And he nailed that poem.
Damn.
Well, thank you.
All right. There are some pesky line breaks in this and some enjambment that makes the reading challenging. So BJ, what was that like? Did you find it easy to read? Was it fun to read? What was that like for you?
You know, it's the construction of this poem reminds me in some weird way of that E. Cummings poem, Grasshopper, where you kind of work your way down and it's this nonsensical enjambment, this enjambment that kind of subverts the expectation until it crystallizes in the final line where Cummings actually writes grasshopper. But before that, there are all these variations of those. And, you know, I think he wrote that, I don't know, 1930s, maybe 1940s. And, you know, he was playing with that idea of modernism and, okay, so everything that we thought was solid isn't solid and all that. And here we are in 2018 with this James Arthur poem, and he's kind of, I think, trying to pick up on that sense of aesthetic that Cummings embodied in that poem, where why make these strange enjambments, right? Why make this kind of giraffe crystallize before us once we work through the strange silences at the end? So it's challenging that way, and I suppose it's somewhat rewarding when it comes together and you realize what the syntax is doing and how the syntax doesn't necessarily line up with the lineation or where he chooses to break each line.
Yeah, so readers, our listeners, you can read this poem on our pages, so you can see exactly what it is we're talking about. The poem is long and skinny with odd line breaks. I liked the surprise of the ordinariness, right, of a giraffe at an American zoo. And it sort of made me realize the extraordinariness of that at the same time.
Yeah, it's been weird, right? Having that animal, like just a majestic long-necked beast. It's an ordinary creature, but at the same time, it's so strange and exotic.
Yeah, this is what we do, that we ship animals around so that we can look at them, right? It's a weird thing. You really think about a zoo. Okay, listeners, this is the moment when we're all really looking at the poem.
Yeah,
And
this is
that's
not
why
us
we're not
tuned out
talking.
at all, right?
There's nothing wrong with your phone or whatever.
Concentration,
You're
right?
looking at this.
Because I love, I mean, it's so true. It's like by studying the giraffe, it's calling into focus the strangeness of the zoo as a structure and a project, right? Like that it's meant to showcase the exotic, right? But the way the study's working too is to say, by paying careful attention to this majestic creature, as Ali put it, it also then shifts into a kind of empathy, right? Of what is this animal thinking? Not as it stares at me, but as it listens to trucks in the distance. So it too is distracted, right? Like there's a bizarre and lovely cacophony there. So like I love that stuff that's happening in the poem, but I'm kind of drawn back to what BJ was saying about the enjambment and the play and the potential chaos with those line breaks. And I actually want more weirdness, right? So when I'm looking at the tail end of the poem, pardon the pun on this, right after it's like, sort of like whisking its tail, right? The head before, like the precarious head before sailing line break, past the gate, eyeing and the sits there like a kind of clunk, right? The line break trucks what is going line break on it in its mind. Like, I almost want more play and risk in the line breaks or the enjambment there.
It's so interesting how you're saying that, Marian, because I don't know James Arthur that well. He's an acquaintance.
Mm-hmm.
We've met a couple times.
Oh, yeah?
But
Then
his
you got to
book-
leave the room.
Yeah, I know. He's having he has a terrific book called Charms Against Lightning, but part of that book has this inward energy, this kind of mirror that he holds up to himself. And we have this strange structure. I mean, the poem is frameworked with no beast of theory and then what is going on in its mind. So we have this kind of symmetry. And it's so interesting to consider what is happening in the poem. Is it just what the words are doing, or is it really a poetry of arrangement? And I think, one of the issues that I have pause, that gives me pause when I run to a poem that isn't necessarily trying to include the reader as much as some other poems do, is how much is this just playing around as opposed to the real hard work of bringing an outside audience into your own inner space? And I think there's some poems that are very successful at doing that, at playing around while including the external reader. But, if we look at this framework and just look at the energy, I mean, it's almost like the poem is zooming in to this giraffe's mind. So I just want to experiment with it for a moment and zoom out. I'm going to actually start with the last line and just try to deconstruct it and see where the energy is. And I think it also kind of makes sense in that cinematic way. So if we just look at the first two words of the last line, on in, right? On in. Its mind trucks what is going past the gate, eyeing the head before sailing, hoisting its precarious, and leans eating the leaves, its tail, it shifts, crane whisking around the yard, a living stick. Its slow steps, like the heel of a walking, the ground. Two kids stare its hoof, pecks giraffe at the zoo. Giraffe, an American. This is a real savannah. Eating words, no roaming. The brains, nor mere poet's creature. No beast of theory. Study.
Wow.
Stop it! What did you just do to my brain? BJ Ward, what?
I got arm hairs, oddly.
The more I'm around poems, I'm really interested in how, they shape silences, right? I knew both Kathleen and Marian 20 years ago when I was given bar readings and I was really interested in the applause and all that. But, as I live with poems more, I'm really interested in the shaping of, there's nothing wrong with that. I still do that once in a while. I'm doing that Friday night at the Stanhope House in Jersey, a blues bar. But I'm really interested in how silences are shaped. And if we kind of divorce the idea of poems are words as opposed to the silences shaped by the words, then that kind of thing of deconstructing how the silence is made becomes instructive to me as someone understanding craft. If that makes sense at all. I don't know. Yeah. So I like that cinematic zooming out, if you were to approach his poem's energy backwards.
Right. I can't wait till James hears this episode and then flips the whole poem and calls it study.
James is
right.
James is a pretty smart guy. He's playing around with a lot of stuff here. Yeah.
What I wanted to say is so much stupider than what BJ just did, but I still can't help myself because I'm that. That's who I am. I was thinking about the thought itself, that last thought, what's going on in the giraffe's mind is not profound at all. Like that is a thought that even little kids have, right? They go, what is that gorilla thinking? Does it think it's in, right? And they feel, you feel really bad, these trapped animals. And it was making me think maybe was that why it's called study? And was that why we make the syntax complex, since the thought, the reward, if we read it directly, is not really a profundity?
It's not a smart thought that the giraffe is thinking, but what it is when you're 6 and you see this giraffe and you're looking at how it's walking and all its strangeness. Once you get up to the giraffe's brain, it's like it flashes right back into your brain, and suddenly you start. It's like a portal or a trigger to some kind of existential moment. That's when you're thinking, "Why do I move like this?" And then you're confronted with your own strangeness. And you have to self-reflect because people are strange.
Right.
And you have those moments when you're 6. I was talking to my kids about that the other day when they're walking around suddenly like, Dad, how'd I get here? And I'm like, nice. That's great. I love that. I can remember about 10 of them when I was a kid and something flashes you into it. It's one of these moments. When
I think you're onto something there too. I mean, if you look at the title, going into the first 4 lines or so, I think James is essentially saying exactly what you're saying. Like, study no beast of theory, nor mere poet's creature roaming the brain savannah eating words. No, this is real. Right?
Yeah.
Like, remember when you're 6, as you would say, and you're looking at that giraffe. And
this poem almost has the effect of a smell to it. And usually you don't do that when you read things. When you smell something and it puts you right back in the day when you first smell it.
Yeah.
And when you read the way the giraffes walk and it pops you right back to the Birmingham Zoo in 1977 or wherever your zoo was when you were that age. But that doesn't usually happen when you're reading something. It doesn't trigger the same way. It's like it's almost jumps some sort of track, some sort of neurological track. It goes from like vision to smell or something.
Right, in the way that it unlocks
funky
something.
Space, yeah.
Ollie, you looked...
I had a comedic moment, but it's past.
Oh.
It's past.
Damn.
You were going to fight BJ.
Yeah. And if we're making, not that we need to make sense of this poem in that way, but I think that's why the kids make an appearance, right? The kids stare at its hoof. Right? That kind of makes sense too, that the kids are our portal into our own first thoughts of first seeing animals at a zoo. Listen to that sound, and that makes me think that's a sign from Marion. You're not abducted, are you? Are you there? Holy shit, that was her rapture sound.
There's a sound associated with it now.
Now there's a sound. At least we have a clue. Marion was just freaking raptured.
It's the sound of alien abduction.
Son of a gun. We never got a sound with it before.
If Marion was just raptured, that is bad news for us.
Why? Because she's gone.
Raptured.
Oh, that we're here. I was only sad that she was gone. I forgot that means
today
I'm
is not
here.
a good day. The weather just got worse outside.
It's going to be really ugly out there.
I think that maybe we should vote without her and hope that she comes back and she can throw her vote in. So what normally happens is whoever is remote texts it to Joe. But those of us in the room do the same thing we do at a meeting, which I hope our listeners agree that it sounds like it's callous to go 1, 2, 3, shoot, thumbs up, thumbs down. But after you've had the kind of discussion we've had, I hope it doesn't seem as so cold, right? To be random and playing 1, 2, 3, shoot over here. But that's what we're going to do. Are we ready? Okay, you've got it? No middle. You're up or you're down. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, vote. Well,
I voted twice because I wanted to go in.
Are you sure you want to admit this?
I wanted to go in both forwards and backwards.
Oh. Marion?
Hello.
Guess what, darling?
What, darling?
It was the first time that your rapture was accompanied by a little fairy wand. There was this like, doo-doo-doo. And I went, Marion, you haven't been raptured, have you? Like, I'm joking, and you weren't there. And now when you came back, a doorbell rang. So,
I always hear the doorbell on my side. So
we never have heard the doorbell. I mean, we hear the doorbell at the beginning of the day, but not when you come back after a rapture.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So sorry.
I am thrilled to tell you that we just voted without you. And no matter what you vote, the poem's in.
Hey, listen, you should know that I was Facebook messaging you going, I've been raptured, but I'm yes.
Well, good. Then it all
good.
worked out. What was it like up there?
nice.
How are things?
I don't know. My boobs are hard. It's nice up here in heaven. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to
Who
say.
knew that that's a permanent part of heaven?
Yep.
I'll go with it.
Is she talking about
Okay.
What, Joe?
It's part of that Eric Clapton song.
Oh, yeah.
When your boobs are hard in heaven.
All right,
Say,
we're gonna have to
God.
play us out
Oh my
with that.
God.
30 seconds of that,
Yeah.
please.
What a title.
a perfect segue into on a marble portrait bust.
In Worcester, Massachusetts. That's our next poem.
That is. You're welcome. That was for you.
Marion, my darling, do you feel like you might get raptured again? Is there any way you can
I'm
anticipate?
I'm afraid that, since I was, raptured a moment ago, I might be raptured again. So
Okay,
I don't think
then-
I'd be doing Worcester a favor if I read it. So I for
will
somebody in
read,
the
but I'm
room.
going to safely put on my glasses so that I don't suddenly have a vision blur because I'm having contact issues again, as Ollie warned me that I would. So we're not going to talk about that.
Okay.
But we're just going to put on these glasses so that I can read it in safety. And are we ready? They make me talk like this. When my glasses are on, I feel like... Okay. All right, here we go. I'm not going to do that through the poem. That would be rude, James Arthur. Okay. On a marble portrait bust in Worcester, Massachusetts. Someone with a careful hand carved your center-parted hair, which frames your forehead like a proscenium and tumbles into ringlets in front of either ear. But we don't know the sculptor's name or whose face you represent, only that you were found in the basement of a Spanish drugstore in New York. Classical in your proportions, with a long, narrow nose, you look out, pupilless, from your three-quarter pose, smiling as if to imply that all questions of form are superfluous and absurd. How fitting that in your case the medium was subtracted, not applied to a canvas or built up word by word. Compact like a star, with one long braid bound behind your head, cold like a gun. More absolutely pale than any bone or shell, and your strict, hard surface sparkles in the sun. Okie dokie. So there's
Beautiful
that.
reading, Kathleen.
Thank you, Marion.
Mm-hmm. We are. So, and first thoughts, immediate thoughts, I'm really impressed with the sustained, close reading of this sculpture, right? There's something so dedicated about the close curiosity, right, of the speaker, like just looking at the way this art object is created, right? And then that feels like the faithfulness in the poem, right? Sort of a rich description and celebration of the piece.
Explain this to me, Marion. I know that you can.
Yeah.
I appreciate more the moments when I step away from the sculpture. Like the detail, I'm interested in the basement of a Spanish drugstore in New York. And I'm interested in cold like a gun. And I think I also, my interest was piqued for a moment thinking about what sculpture is, a taking away rather than a building up. You know, certainly I've thought of that before. That was a nice little reminder of that, the idea of that in sculpture. But exactly what you're talking about, the poet paying attention to, the sculpture itself is less interesting to me than the moments my brain can step away from it for a second.
Well, okay. So here's the thing I want to like throw on the table too. I love ekphrastic poetry. I love when a poem takes on an art object and then thinks with it some way, right? And I think there's something about this poem that sort of pulls its punches a little bit and doesn't think it the whole way through, like really resides in description and not any kind of epiphanic, you know, seeing yourself seeing the thing in order to have some big idea about what it means to see a thing.
You know, I think
right?
you're onto something there, big, Marion. Now, you know, it's so hard not to consider some of the other great ekphrastic poems based on sculpture. Right. I mean, the one that comes to, I think, well, to my mind, I'm sure a lot of people's minds are, is Rilke's Archaic Torso of Apollo, which ends after that description, right, ends with that great epiphany. You must change your life, right?
Right.
There's nowhere that does not see you. You must change your life. And that's the turn of the poem right there in Rilke. But I'm not sensing that turn here. And yet, the poem also has some other kinds of pleasures for me. I like how James Arthur is kind of propelled through the poem through phonics. Like he's working in and out of these loose rhymes, you know. In the first stanza, it's hair and ear, but by the third stanza, he's really hitting some sounds that I think are subtly done. Unless I didn't pick them up the first time it was read, and then when I read it again, I say, wow, that sound relates to this other thing. So I'm thinking of how nose starts the sound, and superfluous, but there's also pupilless, and which kind of is with your case, and nose with canvas in the third stanza. And then the last stanza we have gun, and then that second round of bone, and then the exact rhyme of sun. You know, so he's working these sounds that are pleasurable. I don't know if it's enough to pull the poem off, but I think it's a strength of the poem that should be mentioned. But I do wish that there were, as you called it, an epiphanous moment or a turn where he leaves the triggering subject and finds the discovered subject of the poem.
Right. Okay. So I'm so glad you pointed out the phonics here, because it's delightful, right? Like go back to the third stanza, right, where it's proportions and then narrow nose, right? And proportions then gets picked up with pupilless in the third line and pose, right? So proportions, nose, pupil is pose is brilliant within like a 3-line space. The way those sounds sort of tumble and are like controlled simultaneously is just glorious. And I use the word epiphany. Maybe that's the wrong way to frame it too. I think the thing that I'm craving is like that moment of looking back, right? Or you're confronting the art object in order to confront something that is in the act of confrontation. So it's in the self, or it's in like some kind of awareness. Maybe it's an epiphany, but it's that turn, or it's that delivery of an abstraction. But and the reason I'm sort of like hemming and hawing here too, because like I don't want to be insisting on policy right? around ekphrastic poetry. Like there has to be a turn, but it just feels like there's he's pulling his punches, like he's holding something in reserve here, and it's hard for me to know what that is.
One of my favorite composers in the 20th century is this guy named Vladimir Ussachevsky, who owned the first magnetic tape machine after World War II. And one of the first things he did was he recorded things at normal speed and then played them back at half speed or double speed or backwards. And what I like about both of the poems, I'm going to connect the last one to this one too, is this slow motion slow panning of the image where it just comes out and just keeps stretching out, and then you're shifting your perception. And I guess I know there's no real epiphanic moment to this poem, but I love the journey from the beginning to the end. Ussachevsky would make these sounds with a piano where instead of going ding, it would go and just make this strange, eerie, beautiful sound that you couldn't really put your finger on it. And I really don't want to be told what to think at the end of this poem.
Right.
I love the sound of it. And it's 2018. I'm tired of people telling me what to think. I want to just have an image that lets me meditate on something. And so there isn't the same punch as the other poem had, but I love where I am when I'm reading it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Hey, Tim, what was that sound?
Yeah. Don't get me started on the sound. I can do those all day long.
I wanted Joe to play us out with the Eric Clapton song, but now maybe it should just be that noise.
Should that be the title of this episode?
No. Because we don't know how to spell that.
Google it.
Well, do you have anything to say, Ollie, at all?
I mean, I really like, I think I'm more with you, Kathleen, where I like the image. I think I'm more in love with, like, the thought of who this person was, and I feel like I don't get enough of that. At least for me, that was what was bringing me in, like the thought of this, the person that's so important to make an honorary bust of them, but forgotten in time.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I wanted the idea of that explored more.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean who the person was that the bust is depicting? I thought you meant who the person is, the narrator, like when they approached
both
the
are
bust.
kind of interesting.
Right.
That's fascinating, BJ.
Right.
Yeah, maybe that's why, to be honest with you, I'm not hooked in. I'll just say it. And I think it's because I don't know anybody here. I don't know the speaker. I don't know the artist. I don't know the bust.
I think that's
and maybe
fair.
that simple that I need some way to have some kind of. I'm not feeling anyone.
The only doorway that I get in this poem, maybe you all see something I'm not seeing, is into the narrator's personality. Is this really interesting simile, hold like a gun, right?
Yeah.
Now, it takes a certain kind of speaker to come up with that analogy.
To put those two together.
To put those two together. And I don't get much more than that. But that's a really interesting facet of the poem.
Yeah.
That I wish there were more moments like that.
Right.
For me.
Is a gun, do we have enough familiarity with a gun that I would ever use it as a simile? Like, I don't think so. I don't think I would ever say quote like a gun. But what about this one? Compact like a star. That gave me pause as well, because I don't think of stars as compact. They may well be. I know nothing of a star's composition. But are they like a piece of stone that hard, like a sculpt, like a marble?
I think it's just that the density is just very dense.
They are as dense as marble. Oh. See, I don't know that.
Yeah.
So that was another simile that made me go, compact like a star. Oh, are stars compact? Like, started having this just, that distracted, like, I always tell my students, you want your people to stay on the page, not ever lift your head up and go, what? And I think that was another, like, I lifted my head up,
But I will say that I don't lift my head up on that first stanza. The first simile is your center parted hair, which frames your head like a proscenium. And that simile is a lovely revelation. I'm like, oh yeah, I can totally see that. I can absolutely see that hairstyle. It turns the forehead into a stage, right? Like, and now the face is the spectacle to be witnessed, right? Yeah. And that what a great like occasion or setup, right, for the rest of the description that follows. I thought that was super cool. But then we don't know anything, right? Like, we don't know the sculptor's name. We don't know who you are. we got nothing except for where. So what can we do but describe you? Because the rest is like hypothesis and bullshit. So maybe that's the argument, that description really is all you get.
Right. And that's exactly what I'm saying. It's just like, and for me, that doesn't compel me enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's how you led this whole conversation about what ekphrastic poetry is supposed to do, or, yes, this is absolutely
can
a description
do, right?
of a sculpture. Right?
And I think Kim made a good point too before about it's 2018, so we can't hold it necessarily the same standards as in days past. But what is it doing here for us as 2018 readers that's intriguing, that's invigorating, that we feel at least slightly changed by this encounter with art?
Right.
I just want to know how it got into the drugstore. That's
cool too. That's what I mean. I'm more interested in things about it, around it, than the sculpture itself. How did it end up in a Spanish drugstore in New York? And what does a Spanish drugstore really mean?
A bodega.
Yeah. Drugstore?
Dwayne, yeah.
No. No. I mean, isn't every drugstore also Spanish? A bodega is not a drugstore. Like, why do we have to have the adjective of Spanish? But I'm intrigued on the why, right? Mm-hmm. Where isn't there also stuff in Spanish, and where aren't people speaking Spanish, right? I don't know why. I don't know. Every drugstore is a Spanish drugstore, is what I'm trying to say. Right, anymore. Right? So it's just interesting though, like why that again is like I'm more interested in going off and staying in the drugstore and figuring it out, and how this marble bust was discovered there.
I guess my only real desire for this poem is to know the name of the drugstore. I love it with concrete names of drugstores. Vague names of stores get on my nerves a little bit.
A Spanish drugstore.
Then you could say a Spanish drugstore. You could just say the name, and that might take care of it. Yeah. But that's the one thing that kind of, because everything else is so specific, the image and it's close up, and then why get vague at that moment?
Mm-hmm. Why do we have, or why that specificity? Why is it a Spanish drugstore? That's kind of what I'm saying.
But that's still vague, because then it brings up more questions.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I think I am saying the same thing, just differently, as usual. Kids, we still talking? Or are you ready to vote?
Well, I just want to say one last thing, which is I've spent like almost 2 days talking to undergraduates about the necessity of describing whatever sources they're using in a way that makes a reader who's like maybe not so familiar with them feel like they can see them. And this does that nicely. But that's, and I just wonder, is it enough? Right. And that's really what we're talking about. Like, is the rich, lush description, the capacity of language to deliver images, Tim Fitt's radiant image poetic style, right? Is it enough? Or is there something that we're craving more of? I don't know. I just want to say that's what I'm going to keep thinking about as we vote.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Stay here this time, Mayor.
I'm holding on
to something.
Resisting the rapture.
That's grounded. I can just picture you. What'd you do? Knock your mic over? Are you sitting at the desk in your window?
I am.
Oh, good. Then I can really picture you. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, vote. Attention. Oh, it's in. It's in.
Ooh,
all right. James Arthur, 2 for 2. Very interesting.
Nice.
Do we have time to talk about CBD oil? Should we?
CBD oil?
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Great stuff, everybody.
Wait, I think we should start with a disclaimer. Painted by Quarterly and Drexel University advises you to see your doctor before you take any sort of anything that we ever say to do.
And we will simply describe and not endorse CBD oil.
Yes.
Describe.
Yes. Well, I'm going to start since I started it. So, and I think I can say this because he said it on his podcast. The Brad Listy podcast, Other People? Anybody out there listening to that? You might be. If you're listening to this one, you might be listening to us. So he's out in L.A. He was real involved when we did the literary deathmatch in L.A.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And he did a lot of advertising for it and stuff. So he interviews different authors and blah, 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 blah. The other day that he said he likes to get really, really baked and then drink a lot of coffee, and that this helps his creative process. And and the author that he had on was in agreement that this was also the way this author liked to work. So I may or may not have tried that. We'll leave that out in the air. But I can talk to you about taking a lot of CBD oil and doing the same thing. And having, I've had 3 experiences with this right now where I have the best flow, really wonderful flow, typing with determination, like not being able to type fast enough. I wrote about something that I've been wanting to write about for more than a year, Marion, and I was with you when I had an epiphany about needing to write about this, which I'm not going to talk about that. But anyway, it was really awesome, and this is going to sound like the most Virginia Woolf angel in the house moment anybody has ever heard me say. But the thing that really worked for me was that I didn't feel guilty that I was writing. Like
Nice.
all of the other work, like I'm constantly thinking, but I have these papers to grade and I have this to, this to do and that to do and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And there was none of that whatsoever. And I just fully owned, and I'm not even talking about a lot of time, people, like, you know, an hour and a half of solid, focused writing. For me, that's kind of miraculous. You know, it's very difficult for me. So I just thought that I would share that with our listeners because CBD oil is legal. You can get it at your health food store.
Wait a minute. I can't get that here.
Maybe. Have you looked?
What? One wonders. Question mark.
Well, you know what? We might even follow that up on the show notes, whether or not Mary can get that in Abu Dhabi.
Right.
See if you can. It is at the regular health food store for us.
Okay.
And and Jersey and PA, and you just walk in and there it is. Not in PA.
No, it's not legal in Abu Dhabi.
Oh, it's not. Oh, Joe already looked at us for
There's some states that it's not legal in America too.
All right, wait.
Yeah, Texas. But look at Texas. Did you see what happened last night?
Okay, so Samantha Neubauer can't be here tonight. She swore that over the winter break, she was going to do her best to get to Philly, and we would try to do a podcast in Philly.
Yeah.
Could we do what you have said? Could we CBD oil ourselves for a podcast?
Well, yes. We certainly could. Why couldn't we?
I think that might be a fun experiment.
That might be a fun experiment. So you're interested in how it would make us talk with one another rather than write. We could do both things. We'll load
Let's
up.
do both things.
We'll load up and we'll podcast.
PJ, are you in? We're going to do like a writing retreat, a CBD oil inspired writing retreat, and then we'll do a podcast.
Have you tried it yet?
What does CBD stand for?
Thank you. I was afraid to ask.
Cannabis, something. So it's a cannabis oil without the THC. So there is absolutely no stoned fog at all. But you get your shoulders come down several notches. For me, it feels like I've had a little bit of a massage. My shoulders come down and the top of my skull is loosened in a very nice way. Instead of feeling like this, you're just a little like this, right?
No,
you can't see. I'm clenching and I'm unclenching.
And does it have the same effect on you, Ollie?
I mean, I really don't use CBD oil that often. However,
You just gave it a ringing endorsement.
I mean,
He might have been endorsing the whole package. I don't know.
I won't say or deny claim that statement, but regardless of that, there's a great documentary that was on. I think it's like 60 Minutes or something like that, called Charlotte's Web, where there was
That's not a documentary.
Well,
Charlotte's Web makes CBD. One of my very good friends is buying it from Charlotte's Web.
Charlotte's Web is a specific strand that was made for a little girl who lives in Colorado now because she had these terrible seizures. And she wasn't able to control her seizures. And then, they tried all these medicines. It was killing her, these antibiotics and stuff like that they're giving her.
Should have got raptured again.
She went to Colorado and they started giving her 1 drop of CBD oil under her tongue and completely halted the seizures. She's living a normal life. So if that's not a testament
I
for
wonder,
it, then I don't know what it is.
Then you know what? I'm going to have to mention this to a friend of mine is buying from that line. Look at how many things we have to put in our notes. Wonder if Charlotte's Web will send us any for our experiment in December/January. So like when you try it and when you try that get really baked and drink a lot of caffeine, it may or may not. Can't really. It might just feel you might end up feeling like a really stoned person getting a lot of work done. That might be what it is. The coffee and the pot. I don't know. I made it for her, maybe. So I have turned Tim on to CBD oil. I will admit it. I am Eve to his Adam.
I've been using it on a scar on the back of my hand, and it seems like it has lightened it.
You're using it on your body, but aren't you also squirting it?
Yeah.
Should we all squirt some on air?
You know what?
I really don't understand that. For
I like to.
What?
I've noticed that it makes me really tired in the afternoon, so I'm trying just to use it at night.
Interesting. So, are you using the milligrams I gave you?
I'm doing two squirts.
Using a liquid like this?
He's using exactly this. Okay, so this is only 1 milligram.
Yeah, it's not much.
This does not put me to sleep. This does the reverse. It wakes me up.
Okay.
But if I take 15 to 20 milligrams, then I sleep very well. I have our listeners know, if you're real loyal, I talk about my sleep problems all the time, and I recommend different podcasts to help us sleep. But if I take like 30 or 15, it helps me go to sleep. The little one hitters actually give me a little bit of a bounce. Yeah. And I actually called this manufacturer and spoke with a really nice person there and told her that I had hoped it would help me sleep, but it's making me feel lively. And she said that it's like crazy that everybody really does have their own reactions. You got to find
If you're using a liquid, Tim, you should try to get like a topical cream for that.
Okay.
It'll work better.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. You should get something that's made to do topically. So what I'm gesturing around about is a bottle, and it's squirt. The squirt we're talking about, Mara, it's an oil, and you squirt it, but it doesn't really squirt because it's an oil, so it kind of plops. But you get a drop, and you hold it under your tongue for a little bit, and then you swallow it. So it's made to be done. Taken orally. So, Tim, they do make topical creams.
Now, if we only had an intern who could call some of these companies to see about getting samples.
Well, I think we put up this podcast right away. And we recommend both. Where are my glasses? What's the brand on this?
Well, we don't say any brands yet.
Oh, that's true.
No brands, right?
But I just gave Charlotte's Web all kinds of free.
I mean, that's different. that little girl was having seizures.
But we should make sure that the company didn't steal that. Do you want to try?
If we only had an intern who understood the legality of mentioning names on the air.
If only we had what?
I'm being sarcastic.
I think that we're allowed to talk about it if we're not being nasty about it.
Yeah.
Right?
You're allowed to say anything you want.
You're allowed to say anything you want.
We are allowed to say anything we want.
This is America.
It is it? Is it? We did take back the house last night, Mayor. I'm sure you heard.
Yes, I heard. And I voted from afar. Take that. Take that, America.
The royal we. Take that, America. Glad you did it. So now since I took up all the time, I got to quickly tell you what happened. So what happened is my son adopted a cat. The cat had kittens. So at one point we had 5, 6, 7 cats in the house. And at one point they got fleas. So we went to the vet, and the vet gave us this advice, and I'm now giving you this advice. But again, Painted Bride Quarterly recommends that you speak with your veterinarian before taking any of this advice. Our vet told us to buy the large dog flea liquid and then just open it up, pour it in a different vial, and only take out as much as we need. And she actually gave us a syringe and a little vial to do all of this. So my son lost the vial by the time we were doing it the third time. So I had an empty bottle of CBD oil. Can you already see where this is going?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And we poured the flea stuff into the CBD oil. So 2 days ago, I squirted it in my mouth.
Oh.
You didn't see where that was going?
I thought it was going in a different direction. I thought it was going to go in a different direction. I thought you were going to say you invented the best flea
I
thing
wrote
ever.
a novel and no. I squirted flea killer into my mouth. And it gets even better. It does get better for just a second because I just went, bleh, what, bleh. And my mouth was like tingling. My entire mouth was just like had electrocuted my mouth. But I was just like, la la la, and I went on with my day. I didn't really think again about it. I don't know why. When normally this tastes lovely and it's a lovely, refreshing peppermint. So, but I guess I just had somewhere to go. So those of you know me, like I'm already doing the next thing. So I just like went on to the next thing. So the next day, are you ready? Is everybody ready? I did it again. But this time I had enough presence of mind to go, this should not be happening. And I spit it into the sink, and I was in my bathroom, and I grabbed my toothbrush, I started brushing my teeth, and I was grabbing the mouthwash at the same time and still going, what the, right? And then I went, holy shit, because I realized what it was.
Right.
You know, it wasn't just bad CBD oil. This was flea killer.
Poison.
Poison. Yeah. And I thought about calling poison control, but, you know, it's actually really wonderful that it all occurred the way it happened because since I had already done it the day before, swallowed it, went on with my day, I thought, okay, I'm not going to die because I'm not dead yet. Right?
Tried getting jacked on coffee.
So dose 2, which I managed to spit out and brush out and mouthwash out and gargle out and everything I did to get it going, was not as scary because I knew that I had survived the first time. So I highly recommend that nobody drink flea killing oil, but
for
also,
large dogs,
if you
Kathleen.
if something should happen that you do, you probably won't die. Probably. I mean, it was just a little.
All right. You know what? But everybody in the room, please keep your eye on her for the next 24 hours so that she doesn't curl up and fall over somewhere.
Monday, I'd surely be dead. I'm sure my body has processed. Right?
Right? I guess so. I'm a warrior,
I work
Kathleen.
in separate offices. He's going to keep coming around it today and just looking at it.
It's like when you get a concussion, right? Like, just keep checking on you.
The only way to really know what the effects are, Kathleen, is to keep using it. Go home, just do 1 squirt a day, keep a log.
You know what would be funny, not funny, is to
everything you said
to talk to a poison control center about the calls they get, because what if I called them today and said 2 days ago I squirted flea killer? If I was the person answering that phone, I would want to be able to say you're not dead yet, obviously you didn't take enough, obviously it wasn't enough to kill me.
That's what they should say on every call. So?
Well, how much did you swallow?
If you're talking to me about it, you're probably okay. So that happened.
Oh, BJ, don't take any of that CD oil from anyone in that room.
No, well,
I think next Slush Pile, you all ought to frontline yourselves and then talk about some bumps.
I'm always pretty coffeeed at these sessions.
My God.
Well, you know what we really should do? So we're just going to keep on going backwards. We read the backwards poem, right? You read it backwards. It was so brilliant. Such an amazing move, BJ. But what if we recorded an episode really late at night where we're on wine and only Marion and Samantha are on coffee?
Nice.
Because we have frequently talked to our Abu Dhabi friends where they might have had a glass or two. So we could do it at 9 at night and it'll be there 8 a.m., right?
No, you'd have to push it back. It's 10 a.m. Your time is 7 a.m. my time. We could do that though.
10.
If you guys would.
p.m.
10 p.m. your time.
Well, we'll be able to be good and lit by 10 p.m.
That's what. Yes. Okay, good.
Joe, can you open up the studio late at night for us? If we get you drunk? Oh, he's saying, okay. Maybe if we get him drunk too. Maybe.
Okay.
We got a maybe. We're not saying anything on the record. Okay. Well, thanks. BJ Ward, thank you so much for putting up with us.
Oh, thanks for having me here.
BJ
Real
Ward.
pleasure.
BJ Ward. Yay!
And Joe Zhang on the board. Woo 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 woo. And Marion out in Abu Dhabi and Ollie and Tim right here with me. I think we need to hear that again.
Cannabidiol.
That's what CBD oil is, and that's a pronunciation wrong. So now we know.
Wait, can I just say before we wrap it up, I started the day at a research conference here on campus.
Yeah.
And listened to a scholar who's researching the camel races here in Abu Dhabi. And so they put little robots on the back of camels instead of people. And they race camels with these tiny little robots that are like managed from cars that race alongside the camels. So that's just get that in your head. And so this other scholar in the audience raised his hand and said, I just so happen to have this recording of the men who race camels in Saudi Arabia. And they have a secret language that they yell and speak to their camels while they're in the car. And he hits play. And it's this like shrieking, shouting, like half Arabic, I don't know what kind of language, like on super loud in this auditorium for like 5 minutes. It was pretty amazing. And what a great way to start the day when the end of the day is that voice saying, what? Cannabidiol. Cannabidiol. It oddly sounds like what camel jockeys shout into their microphones to the robots on the back of camels.
Cannabidiol.
Sounds like something Pumbaa would have said to Simba.
Right?
Cannabidiol.
Oh, my Lord. James Arthur, please forgive us.
James Arthur.
And thank you for sending us your work, and we'll be in contact soon. And listeners, please let us know how we're doing. You can be honest. We're honest with you, so you can be honest with us. Keep reading, everyone. Bye.
Bye.